He's apparently a YouTuber of sorts, and he uploads videos. That's all I know. I've watched, I think, 2 minutes of it. Yeah, I watched to about here, and that's about it. So, let's watch. Let's watch this.
The coronavirus hoax.
Mr. Reagan.
Hell of a way to open up, ain't it?
I've noticed that a lot of left-wing blue-check Twitter people, I think they're called twits. So I've noticed that a lot of twits have criticized conservatives recently for claiming that the coronavirus is a hoax. Let me be clear. Nobody is claiming that the coronavirus is a hoax. It's a real virus.
Well, amazing, video title, my guy.
Nobody is disputing that. The hoax people are citing is the alarmism of the mainstream media. The mainstream media has caused a global panic. Flights from Europe.
I mean, there are some instances where people have talked about. I've gone a little overboard with talking about it, like John Oliver talked about the drinking of bleach and other stuff. But I think that a lot of the talk about the coronavirus is completely justified. Right? It's completely justified that we're talking about what's going on. And we're talking about a global panic. A lot of times we're talking about the economy, but I think it gets into that a little bit later, so let's keep watching.
Are canceled. I disagree with Trump on this one. People claim that Trump supporters never disagree with Trump. Well, that's not true. Here's an example right here. And many conservatives will disagree with me on this, but I think that this is an overreaction. The NBA postponed their season indefinitely. Disney closed.
Good.
Broadway closed.
Good.
Everything is canceled pretty much. Nobody's flying anywhere. The airline industry is crashing, no pun intended.
Well, not good. That's not good.
Oil prices are crashing. The
That's also not good. Good for consumers, bad for the economy and the jobs.
entire stock market is in a nosedive.
Horrible.
By the way, throw your money in now if you have something in savings. You're going to make 20% back probably by the end of the year, maybe even in the next few months. But make no mistake.
Not too wrong.
This is a massive overreaction, a hysteria manufactured by CNN and the mainstream media.
Okay, so I think right now he's talking about is that all these economic consequences, all this economy, it's the media going out and talking. It's talking about it and they're making it so spooky, making it so scary that the economy is just going to a nosedive. People aren't buying stuff. Investors are scared shitless, and I guess all the investors in the economy are just the dumbest people on planet Earth if they're just looked at a 5-minute CNN segment, screamed, and took all their money out of the stock market, leading to the Dow losing about 33% of its value. I mean, personally, I'm a guy, I guess, who partially trusts the market and trusts investors to be kind of knowledgeable. I mean, when JP Morgan predicted a recession for July, I even though I don't like a lot of their practices, I think JP Morgan are pretty knowledgeable when it comes to the economy, and I think a lot of investors are as well. I don't think just 33% of the value was just lost after a quick little yelp and then they all just pulled their money out. When it comes to downplay of less people buying products, that's gonna happen. If people are being advised to stay in their homes, definitely people who are older, people who generally might have a lot more savings, they're gonna stay in their homes, definitely if they're in a higher risk group. And unless you are advocating for those groups of people to go out into the world and just treat everything like it's normal, it's not gonna happen. And if we are to treat everything like it's normal, then that curve, the flattening of the curve, will be impossible. Right? So unless he's advocating for us to take dangerous actions and continuing how we usually live our day-to-day life and not adapt our life slightly to the coronavirus and how we're supposed to stay healthy, and in this, I have no clue if he's going to advocate for that. Again, I watched a minute and a half of this, about 2 minutes of this. Maybe he will advocate for that later in the video. If he is going to, that's dangerous. And another thing about the economy, another thing investors have taken note of. Supply chains are in complete disarray. And investors understand this, right? I don't usually talk about the market that much, but the market's pretty intelligent when it comes to this stuff. Our supply chains in a modern globalized economy can be quite fragile. If one country, since we've went into specialization, some countries make things better than others. For example, China's much better at manufacturing when it comes to the price overall than us. A lot of it comes to labor costs. A lot of it comes to fact, for instance, they make a lot more rare earth metals than us. That comes to environmental regulations, a few other factors. Countries, have specialized in what they're good at making. And if one country shuts down because of the coronavirus and their supply line shuts down and it's the middle of a supply chain, that can put a whole product production production like in a complete disarray. And not to mention the fact that in the modern economy, a lot of businesses don't really keep larger inventories anymore. People like Tim Cook kind of like push those type of like supply chain models of where we have very low inventories. So this market, the stock market crashing and investors being scared and taking their money out isn't just because they watched like a 5-minute media CNN segment and they know like, oh, consumers are being panicked out of buying stuff and so we need to take all of our money out and recession now. That's not what's happening, right? People are buying less products because they are trying to react. Some people, at least, I know you're encouraging the exact opposite. You're encouraging risky behavior in the populace, but most people or at least I hope most people, are trying to engage in an intelligent way with the knowledge of a pandemic in the United States and a national emergency, which was declared by many states and by the national government. And they're trying to correct their daily lives accordingly, which includes, social distancing, not going to large gatherings. Trump even said, like, don't go to gatherings with 10 people or more. He's adjusted that. A lot of state governments has suggested the same, and people are trying their best to correct, even though we've seen that constantly fail when we look at like footage of the beaches in Florida or bars and other things. But that's why state governments are quickly adjusting to use the power that's under their jurisdiction to go a little further than the national government has the ability to because of the Constitution. So unless he's going to be asking for people to take risky and unhealthy behavior, this was what was going to happen. And even if that was the case, he'd be asking that to happen on a worldwide scale to not even mess with the supply lines. And if that was the case, over all that and all this does happen, the economy would still take a hit because the healthcare and hospitals hospitals mostly would be overburdened. I mean, this is where the whole flatten the curve idea came from. And with the increased people going to hospitals and not spreading out that over time by flattening the curve, that would also hurt the economy. So no matter what, the economy is going to take a hit. We're just doing what's safer for Americans and the world at large. And actually probably safer for the economy in the long run.
Coronavirus is not the bubonic plague. It's the flu. It's a flu that we simply
isn't. It is not, but let's hear why it's the flu.
Don't have a vaccination for. It's a flu that might be a little bit more dangerous.
So a flu we don't have a vaccination for is actually really scary. But even if that's the case, it has a higher fatality rate than the flu. The percentage it is higher kind of varies from country to country and by the fact that we can't test everybody. But it's kind of undeniable that it does have a higher death percentage, like fatality rate than the flu.
For older people than the typical flu, but it's the flu and it's nothing to get too worked up about. But people are panicking. Now there are a lot of
supply chains can start back up, but the problem is at the moment they're kind of cut off if the nation's kind of on lockdown and people are quarantining and people are doing that. So supply chains can kick back up, but at the moment, some are in disarray.
Different statistics floating around Facebook and Twitter. But let's have a look at a few that I think are very critical. Now, this data here is primarily from Business Insider. Ebola, 40% fatality rate.
I love this argument. Yep. Okay, let's hear it.
Nipah, 77 fatality rate. SARS, 9.6 fatality rate. MERS, 34% fatality rate. Coronavirus, 3.6 fatality rate. And this is actually wrong. This is just from the confirmed cases. The estimate that I saw was 1.
Could you imagine if it was 3.6, how terrifying that would be? How absolutely terrifying that would be? That would be absolutely devastating.
1% because most cases go unreported, and I think it's actually less than that, way less. Every panic-induced virus in the past 30 years has been deadlier than the coronavirus. But do you remember everything getting shut down in previous years? I don't. Do you remember Obama being blamed?
So the problem when it comes to this is when these types of diseases actually have a lower fatality rate and are able to spread, and when we look at coronavirus, it spreads through contact, the face, mouth, eyes, all these, way different than how Ebola spread, for example. When it has those two factors, low fatality rate and low enough, right? Not 0.001, but 0.6 to 0.9 or 3.5 or something, anywhere in that range, and it spreads the way the coronavirus spreads, that's very, very scary. Definitely when we're seeing that it is spreading from nation to nation to nation to nation like wildfire, right? I mean, in some cases, this is what scares me personally. In places like Syria, there's no reported cases, but that doesn't mean that there's no cases. If you look around it in Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, Cyprus, all the nations surrounding it, they have reported cases, and those cases are rising as you would expect them to, but no cases within Syria. So like civil war zones, their inability to test is scaring me in it, and I'm scared that will compound the crisis in those countries. But the reason why this is so scary is that right now it's lower than Ebola. Right now it's lower than all those diseases. But as time goes on and it continues to spread to more and more and more people, since there's more people in the pool of the affected, quote unquote, more people overall will die. Even though if I individually caught Ebola compared to if I individually caught Corona, there's a much higher chance that I die from the Ebola than the Corona. But if millions of people caught Corona compared to the very small amount of people that could catch Ebola, because it has a high fatality rate, and a lot of the people who catch it can't just go around and shake hands, definitely because a lot of the symptoms you can't really read just out of nowhere, right? You can't, a lot of those symptoms doesn't like show up for like a few days, or they're so mild you don't even know, so you just keep interacting with people and spreading it. Or if Ebola, you get Ebola, you kind of know you got Ebola. It may take you like a few hours to figure it out, or maybe a day. You kind of figure out quite quickly if you have Ebola once you start vomiting or doing whatever it is that you had Ebola, like when you had Ebola, the symptoms were. But if I remember correctly, symptoms were quite heavy, quite obvious. When it comes to Ebola, it was a lot more difficult to spread. If I remember correctly, it was bodily fluids, which, I mean, unless you're making out with a lot of people on the street, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't have contained it. And we actually did a lot of effort. Even recently, we were funding efforts to contain it. So I don't really get the argument here. I guess the argument is, it's scarier to have this than this. Correct, but it's scarier for this to spread because it's more likely to spread. It's gonna spread higher because it's easier to spread, and with the more people that have it, the more people that die overall, right? And there's the threat of this becoming seasonal. With Ebola, it's been quite contained relatively.
Blamed for these viruses or called a racist? No. In fact, there was no real panic at all. Why? Because the media didn't tell you to panic. They didn't have a motivation to attack the president at that time.
Also, Ebola, there was a lot of panic about Ebola. There wasn't as much as there is now because there's actual like reason for people to be like, oh shit, something's happening, right? This is something that's going to affect our daily lives. This is something that's going to have a much higher fatality rate once this is all over with. This is something that can spread to me and affect me because it's more, like, it's easier to spread and the symptoms are more mild. With Ebola, that was something that was covered a lot because of how scary the disease was once you had it. But the odds of you getting it were so low. The odds of getting coronavirus are higher with a lower fatality rate. I mean, is this really hard to understand? Not to mention the overburdening of the healthcare system. Because, like, Ebola was not so easy to spread, it wasn't as likely to, like, overbear the healthcare system and in your hospitals if you get a few cases in your country, right? Because they'll be isolated, there'll be a few cases, you put them in hospital beds, you deal with it, you contain it. But with Ebola, if we don't change our actions and we don't flatten the curve, that's going to heavily overburden the healthcare system.
But if the economy crashes and the quality of life in America drops, they think that maybe
the Spanish flu killed more people than World War I, aka the Great War.
They've got a shot at winning the presidential election in November. They don't, but that's their plan.
Okay, number one, he says they don't have a chance. With what the economy's looking like now, yeah, the chances have increased, definitely. I mean, Trump's banking his re-election on the economy. Maybe you shouldn't bank the entirety of your re-election on campaign on one aspect. Definitely one aspect that can be extremely volatile, right? He should have banked it on a few other things. Maybe if he had a better foreign policy, he could have banked it on partially national security. Maybe if he had a better, maybe if he was better for social cohesion, he could have banked it on better, hey, culture, everything's cool right now. Everybody's kind of getting along. Maybe, hey, we're dealing with some criminal justice issues. I mean, he did the First Step Act, but besides that, criminal justice has been kind of ignored. Maybe if he was better on, civil liberties, maybe, doing some stuff around the Patriot Act, maybe we could have banked it on something there. Maybe he could have banked it on a lot more things. But he's concentrated his re-election campaign on one issue that ain't doing too well right now, right? He ran the Obama high until its downfall here. Also, this is a kind of sentiment that I've seen everywhere. I've seen it with Donald Trump's junior son. Here's a really good. Here's a good example of this. Donald Trump's junior son. Donald Trump's junior son. Donald Trump Jr. was doing an interview on Fox News, and he basically said that the Democrats want the coronavirus to come to America and kill millions of people just so they can stop Trump's period of winning. Now, this is like pretty dangerous language, literally just saying that the other side wants to kill millions of Americans just to stop Trump. That's really scary language. But of course this guy's saying that, well, it's not even going to do that. That's not even a concern. The health of people is a concern. They're just trying to use this to undercut Trump. All these media companies are just doing everything they can to tank the economy. I mean, a recession is good news, but also a lot of these companies that give these news media advertising and everything like that. The news media would do better generally, I would think, during good economic times. I feel like everybody involved would do better under good economic times. I guess the one argument you could make would be that recession is decent news. But from everything I've seen, the majority of coverage from media, there's been some, of course, has been hyperbolic, right? When they have certain guests on, that goes a little overboard. But a lot of it, true, for places like Fox News, has been downplaying it exponentially. And also, I guess I have more trust in capitalism than this guy. Maybe this guy's like a socialist that talks about the evils of capitalism and their downturns, their hardcore downturns and crashes that happen all the time, and the sacrifice of capitalism is volatility, and we need strength in the nation. Is gonna goose step with a red flag over his shoulder. I don't know, but I have a little bit more trust in the market and investors that they kind of have some knowledge when it comes to when the economy is gonna go under. Once they see some signs, once they look at supply chains and they look at how consumers are gonna react to the fact that some people are gonna have to stay home and not gonna be able to interact with others in places like malls and go to stores and shops and restaurants and bars, because they're gonna have to react with their habits in a healthy way in response to a pandemic. But no, maybe that's not the case. I don't know.
And consider this, the H1N1 virus, commonly called the swine flu, had an estimated fatality rate of 11% in 2009, according to this WebMD article. But in 2013, after better information was available, the situation was reassessed. And now they say that the virus had about a 0.02 fatality rate.
See this other case where the fatality rate was a lot higher and then it was a lot lower? See, it happens. Yes, it happens. And the likelihood is, from everything I've seen, 3.6% probably isn't going to be the fatality rate at the end of the day of the coronavirus. That's most likely not going to be the case. It's probably going to be a lot lower. Numbers I've seen is 0.6% when you look at South Korea. I've seen some numbers in the United States, like most likely it could be like 0.9% or this other number. A lot of numbers. It's going to be more deadly than the flu, though. So again, calling it the flu is uninformed at best and misleading at worst. But then again, even with that being the case, the fact that our cases are so mild and makes it easy for you to go and spread it without your knowledge, if you don't react accordingly and interact with people with social distancing and that type of stuff, to not, again, overburden hospitals, that's the problem. The overburdening of hospitals will make resources not readily available to people who have the virus. That's why we need to stretch this out over a period of time. Flatten the curve. This is a lot easier to spread, and that's the problem. You also don't have medical tools at the ready to deal with this specifically. Again, no vaccine, no other things of that sort. So again, this constant downplaying of what's going on is dangerous language, dangerous behavior. What this guy is practicing right now is dangerous.
Who knows what the coronavirus fatality rate actually is? We literally have no way of knowing. You may have the coronavirus right now and not know it because so many people express zero symptoms.
That's what's so scary about it, how easy it is to spread because people don't know when they have it. And that's why overall, even though it has a lower fatality rate, it could end up killing many more people.
Here's another valuable tweet. This one is from Charlie Kirk, and this is a great tweet. Okay, so this is the deaths every single day worldwide. The flu causes 1,027 deaths worldwide every single day. Pneumonia, 2,216 deaths every single day. Tuberculosis, 3,000 deaths every single day. Coronavirus, 56. Coronavirus is causing an average of 56 deaths every single day. So I think that should put this all in perspective.
So I think this number might be wrong. I think this number's a little outdated, by the way.
As I said, current estimates suggest that 1% of people who get this virus die.
Okay, 1%. So if, let's say 50% to 70% of Americans get it, like some people are predicting, right? Hell, let's say even 30%. That's a lot of people, man. That's a lot of people. If I individually get the coronavirus, I shouldn't be so concerned. Social distance, most likely. I'm also not in a group that is very susceptible to, not susceptible, but I'm also in a group. I'm quite young, quite healthy. I should be fine if I get it, most likely. But if enough people get it, a few people there are gonna die, and if a lot of people get it, which people are professionals, which I trust a lot more than you, currently are getting it, are predicting a lot of people are gonna get it. That's when we have to worry, and we're in that point of, oh shit, we should be worried, and we need to act accordingly to flatten the curve. Again, flatten the curve.
You'll hear 3.6%, but
475 deaths today in Italy alone. If you could send me a resource on that, that'd be really helpful. Valuable tweet from Charlie Kirk is never something you should say out loud.
it's the percent of reported cases, and many cases of coronavirus are going unreported. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't produced a video in about a week. Well, that's because I have been in bed sick. More on that in a moment. First, I have to sell you something. If people become trapped in their homes because of the recent pandemic going around the world, your best friend...
Oh my god, okay. Yeah, we're good. We're a good guy.
...for your 15% off. So, as I've said, I have been sick. Did I have coronavirus? I have no idea. To be honest, I think it was just a really bad...
I mean, who would have thought that this guy would be a big fan of Ronald Reagan, other well-known liar.
...cold. I didn't have a fever or anything like that. So now how do I not know if I had corona or not? Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't feel like I should get tested because people under 55, they're not dying from coronavirus. And
that's such a dumb reason not to get tested. Yes, you have a less likelihood of being killed. I have the lowest likelihood of being killed. I'm 19, man. I am young. I'm healthy. I'm ready to go. Also not feeling any symptoms at the moment, right? There's very little reason for me to get tested. Also, if you wanted to get tested in the United States right now, it's going to be kind of difficult. If I talk to my good friend Freems all the time, he's talking about how in West Virginia, it's nearly impossible to get tested. He wanted to get tested. He couldn't get tested. His family wanted to get tested. They couldn't get tested. Only over, like a little bit over 100 people in the West Virginia were actually tested, right? So even if you wanted to get tested, I doubt you could have gotten tested. But if you had sick and you saw you had the symptoms, you could have been sick, had something that didn't have the symptoms, but let's assume you did, you should get tested. Not because the likelihood of you dying is high, but because if you do have coronavirus, you need to correct your actions accordingly. You need to quarantine yourself basically, so you don't interact with other family members, and definitely don't interact with other people in your household who are in a higher, more susceptible to dying if they get the coronavirus. So it is actually important for you to get tested. This is why South Korea has drive-through testing centers, right? I mean, I assume everybody who doesn't drive through those centers are hacking up blood or something, whatever the worst possible symptom could be. But I do think that it's better to test more people, definitely if they are sick or have symptoms. I'm going to assume, out of the goodness of my heart, that you didn't have the symptoms and you had just maybe bad diarrhea. I don't know, but I'm just gonna assume that, so I keep a sparkling clean view of you.
Why go infect a bunch of old people in the hospital in order to get tested? What's the point of that? My point is just this. If I didn't get tested, how many other people who are really, really sick just aren't going into the hospital, just aren't getting tested? I imagine quite a lot.
You just said you were really whatever.
Again, this virus is not that dangerous. The mainstream media has just hyped it up so much that everybody's gone into a crazy panic. Now, in defense of the mainstream media, this overreaction started in China. We saw some pretty crazy scenes of Chinese people being rounded up by men in biohazard suits.
Hey, a lot of the problem is China was literally the government downplaying what was going on and doing everything to cover it up so it wasn't a big deal. Okay, so actually a lot of it is kind of what you're doing. Now it was a lot different because they were, intimidating, for instance, it was a lot different, but it's the same culture of what you're doing when it comes to downplaying it, where people doctors behind bars were this is a lot like SARS, this is very worrying. They go to that doctor who recently died very recently, horrible tragedy, guy was a hero, an icon about what was going on, really a tragedy. was intimidated by the police. Other people who were showing what was going on the street, having their houses raided. This downplayed, which, you know what that led to? Conspiracy theories about what was going on. People not having the time to prepare. People not preparing, not correcting their actions accordingly if something was going on. And that was happening in December. Even though they had knowledge of it in November, right? And because of that, and them downplaying it in the early stages and kind of trying to cover it up in the early stages, it was a lot worse than it had to be. So you're right that a lot of this goes onto the Chinese Communist Party. The blame, it does. But it was for downplaying it and trying to cover it up.
China blew this thing way out of proportion from the very beginning. Of course, then the left-wing media in the United States went completely crazy, and they actually have fallen back on their favorite accusation against conservatives, that somehow this virus is exposing that we conservatives are, yep, you guessed it, racist. Of course.
It's not really, you don't really need to expose it. You kind of just show it very often.
We're racist because of the coronavirus. This accusation has taken two forms. The first is the accusation that calling it the Wuhan virus is racist because nobody ever classified a virus by the
Okay, also, people are calling it the Wuhan virus a lot less now. I even called it originally the Wuhan virus. I will admit this early on, because there was not like an official like designation. Eventually, when it was COVID-19 and coronavirus, we had kind of terms for it. That's what I called it after that point. You want to know why? Because I had an official term to use for it, right? I had an official term to use for it, so I used the official term, right? And what ended up happening is I corrected my actions, and I definitely never called it a Chinese virus, like the president is doing, right? The president which you support, and you are certain that he isn't a racist. He just calls it the Chinese virus, which, even though I wish the majority of Americans did a lot of research on the topic, knew what every single region it came from, a lot of people don't do the research and will just hear Chinese virus, and some people are legitimately just thinking it came from Chinese people, or we need to distrust Chinese people, because if we see any Chinese people, hey, they could be from China, and ooh, we need to react in this way from around Chinese people. And there's been a lot of instances of, like, racist incidents because of the coronavirus, and people like spreading misinformation about it, and calling it the Chinese virus is something that is adding to that culture. It's just a bad thing to do, and it's really easy just to call it by its official designation.
Geographic region of origin before.
Also, the Spanish flu wasn't from Spain, so great that's your first example up there. It was from Kansas. Its first recorded case was in Kansas.
No, that's never happened ever in the history of the world ever. No, this is something that we conservatives invented.
Were those all the official designations of the virus? Of the different diseases in the virus? I'd really love to know.
Just for this Wuhan coronavirus because we hate Chinese people so much. I mean, even among actual racists, the Chinese seem to be kind of exempt. For whatever reason, racists seem to make...
The Chinese are exempt from racism, guys. I didn't know this. Wow, it's good to know that the Chinese are exempt from racism, because a lot of and I know exactly what he's about to say, because a lot of people online, a lot of alt-righters online like the Japanese waifu culture and really love that, right? But that doesn't mean you're run-of-the-mill racist on the street who just likes to yell racial slurs or whatever the hell racists do on the street. Or the silent racists on the street, who maybe won't just kind of cross the street or kind of whisper something under their breath. That doesn't mean they believe that, okay? Your common everyday racist isn't really in the online hip culture about how the Japanese are actually really honorary Aryans, okay?
Make an exemption for Asians. Maybe they got a thing for Asian chicks. I don't know. But even
guys, please stop saying racist things about the Asians. Don't you know they're trying to produce an ethno state? Yeah, no, they're not. That's not going on.
Even if conservatives were racist against Asians, which is insane, but even if that were true, calling the coronavirus the Wuhan virus, claiming that is racist is completely absurd. In fact, it's so absurd that an organization called the Media Research Center made a brilliant video.
That is an unbiased organization that, if we looked up, would totally not be right-wing watchdog. Well, not right-wing watchdog, exact opposite.
Exposing just how absurd it is.
You're starting to hear the Republicans, especially Trump calling it the Wuhan or the Chinese coronavirus. They're looking for someone to blame.
The Wuhan coronavirus. Wuhan coronavirus.
At least 6 people have died from the Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan...
Is the thing here, like, you said it's bad, but these people also did it. Omega lol? Okay. Is this actually what this is? Is this just like a minute of this?
Coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus.
Wuhan virus.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
The outbreak of the Wuhan coronavirus. Wuhan coronavirus.
The Wuhan coronavirus. The Wuhan coronavirus.
Tying coronavirus to China and Chinese people isn't just a racist dog whistle. It's a whole racist orchestra.
Foreign virus, setting up travel bans for the outside invasion of the disease.
The Chinese coronavirus that they've been
that's
calling
not
the first U.S. case of Chinese coronavirus.
The Chinese coronavirus.
Chinese coronavirus. China's coronavirus outbreak. China's coronavirus.
In China's coronavirus outbreak. China's coronavirus.
China's coronavirus crisis.
China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus outbreak.
China's coronavirus.
Okay, by the way, a lot of these older ones, that's the whistleblower death, by the way. That's the really, like, tragic story of that guy he's really a hero. Calling it China's coronavirus outbreak and the Chinese virus is a little different, because one of those could kind of insinuate something very close to just Chinese people in general, and the other one is China's outbreak, as in the outbreak currently in China, right? Like if I said America's outbreak, then you'd be like, oh, that's the outbreak that's currently happening within America. But saying the Chinese virus, right now, they're not even saying the official designation or anything, or just calling it the virus. They're saying their specific outbreak of the coronavirus. That's not the same thing. So when Trump calls it the Chinese virus, that's a little different, isn't it?
It's China's coronavirus. China's coronavirus.
China's coronavirus.
It's going to come across to a lot of Americans as smacking of xenophobia, to use that kind of term.
Hilarious. The second approach to the conservatives are racist claim has been the idea that because we're not going to Chinese restaurants as much these days, we must be racist. This is a claim that was made first by AOC and reiterated by Ayanna Pressley.
There's a lot of restaurants that are feeling the pain of racism, where people are literally not patroning Chinese restaurants. They're not patroning Asian restaurants because of just straight up racism around the coronavirus.
Maybe usually I could let something like that slip, what he just said in the corner there. If you can't read it, I'll read it for you. She's trying to say that people aren't patronizing Chinese restaurants. She's saying patroning, which is, I guess, the incorrect word. But she never learned to speak English. Usually I'd be a little, really, okay, maybe he's just poking fun at her using the wrong word. But with the track record, I'm starting to be a little suspect.
You know, since the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, we have seen not only the spreading of the virus, but also a rapid spreading of racism and xenophobia. The highest levels, in fact, of the Republican Party fanning irresponsibly these flames. One colleague tweeted that everything you need to know about the Chinese coronavirus, unquote. This painful rhetoric has consequences. Restaurants across Boston's Chinatown have seen up to an 80% drop in business.
I mean, this just doesn't make any sense at all. Even leftists are like, wait, what? Let me tell you, if some Chinese guy got off the plane from Wuhan this morning and went to shake AOC or Ayanna's hand, those girls would be running and hiding under their congressional office desks. The virus originated in China. Of course, people don't want to be around Chinese people.
Okay, wait. But you acknowledge that's racist, right? Do you acknowledge that's racist?
Is it rational? No, I don't think it is. But is it racist? No.
It's by wait, no, that is racist. That just is racist. That I'm pretty sure if I pulled out a dictionary, treating people differently because of their race is racist. In this case, nationality, but we all know. Number one, it's also not Chinese people, because your common run-of-the-mill racist walking down the street doesn't be like, well, because of the skull features on that person, that one's Japanese. So this is something that's affecting all Asian people overall. Koreans, Japanese, Vietnamese, Chinese, everybody from Asia. They're just gonna assume the Chinese. They're gonna assume that this is the Chinese virus. We need to stay away. We need to be fearful. And people not going to Chinese restaurants because of the coronavirus, that is racist. That is you not going there because they are Chinese and thinking because they're Chinese, they're gonna have the virus. I don't want to go there. Oh snap! I'm pretty sure if I pulled out. Okay, let's see. I mean, I don't. This is something that we do. What is racist? A person who shows or feels discrimination or prejudice to other people or other races, who believes a particular race is superior to another, showing or feeling discrimination or prejudice against other people or races. So you're being prejudiced by somebody by saying, I'm not going to go to the restaurant, they're Chinese. Do you not think that at all could be racist? Not at all, not whatsoever. I mean, maybe you want to like argue with me, but I don't think this is arguable. I don't think this is arguable. But I mean, conservatives, I feel like if you call anything racist, they're just gonna brush it aside. Can't be racist. Can't be. Just can't be. I mean, I just don't. Is this something really that's arguable? I don't see it.
Of course it's not, you lunatics. It's what we call self-preservation. If some new form of
See, guys, I have figured it out. Guys, I figured it out. Guys, I figured out the cure to the coronavirus. It's racism. Guys, just be racist and we'll protect ourselves. Because, white people can't get it. They can't! I figured it out! What? I mean, come on, really? Like, I'm more susceptible to the coronavirus in a Chinese restaurant? Not going to a Chinese restaurant isn't self-preservation, it's stupidity. Well, actually, it's smart to not go to a Chinese restaurant, but you shouldn't be going to restaurants, period. You should order from Chinese restaurants, though. Make good food. You know what? I might actually order some Chinese food tonight, just out of spite for Mr. Reagan.
leprosy originated from blonde people, we'd all be avoiding blonde people. That doesn't make anybody racist, you muppets. But let me just reiterate.
Originated from blonde people. Okay, the coronavirus didn't originate from Chinese people. It went to bats, probably went to an animal carrier, and went into China. It didn't originate from the blonde people, because what that sounds like? That sounds like it came from blonde people as a whole. Like this was a virus that mutated out of blonde people, right? Also, notice how he's saying blonde people instead of something like if it originated from, I don't know, Japanese people. What's that one thing? If it originated from Japan, which is a lot different than just it originated from people, because if that was the case, then it'd be originating from people in the United States as well, Chinese people.
Leprosy originated from blonde people, we'd all be...
Originated from Japan would be a little different, but if it originated from Japanese people, that'd be weird if Americans and all just Japanese people overall were just more susceptible to it, which as far as I know, that isn't the case. When you're saying the Chinese virus, a lot of people, even though you're like, well, that's dumb, a lot of people are legitimately thinking, well, this is something that Chinese people just get. And this is something that originated out of Chinese people. This is something that Chinese people are having, and they're acting accordingly to them. With that mindset in mind, they're being racist toward Chinese people, and calling it the Chinese virus is contributing to that culture. And that's why just about everybody's saying, don't say it. Just use the official designation. What you're saying, the conservatives are saying the Chinese virus out of spite to wreck the liberals. They're going to say this even if it contributes to a culture that is making certain Americans in this country feel unwanted, feel targeted, having graffiti blown on their vans, their businesses being not being patronized at the same levels, racial slurs being thrown at them, being treated different on the street, their kids being treated differently.
Avoiding blonde people. That doesn't make anybody racist, you muppets. But let me just reiterate the primary point I'm trying to get across in this video. The real pandemic...
It's hell of an insult, eh?
Pandemic is the media alarmism. This was a great opportunity for CNN to convince people that Trump is a bad president, create public...
You want to know what? There's a lot of reasons to say why Trump's a bad president. It could be his, this is a great freeze frame, by the way. It could be what he did in northeastern Syria and abandoning our allies and contributing to and allowing basically the Turks to roll in, the Turkish government to roll in and do what they did in northeastern Syria, using extremist proxies to commit war crimes against Kurdish politicians and the civilian population. Or maybe it's his reckless killing of Soleimani that has contributed to an escalation of conflict with Iran in Iraq. Or maybe it's his just complete zero knowledge on the Middle East whatsoever. Like when he was talking about the KRG and he just started referring to them as if they were the Syrian Kurds, or his pitiful interaction, or calling El-Sisi his favorite dictator. And that's just talking about foreign policy. That's not even stepping into the many things about domestic policy that he has done, disastrous things for this country. Not to mention contributing to racism, and there's been a spike in hate crimes in this country. I wonder why. It can't be the presidency. It must be the evil, intolerant left that's contributing to that. I mean, we could go down to many, many reasons why I could say I don't think Trump is a good president, and I think he's failing as a president. This is just another aspect of that. They didn't need to cause some recession to make it look like Trump was bad on the media, to give liberals some good dog food or good food to put on their plate to hate Trump a little bit more. They didn't need that. Trump just served this up on a silver platter when it came to his response, and this is something that the media, when talking about the coronavirus, needs to be talked about. And flattening the curve needs to be talked about. Self-quarantines need to be talked about. The fact that we don't have enough resources to deal with this needs to be talked about. Announcements about what states it is in needs to be talked about so the civilian population can react accordingly. It is important for us to be updating people on all the developments of the coronavirus so the population can react accordingly. A lot of people are in states and they don't even know their state has cases of the coronavirus, and they haven't adjusted their actions accordingly. That's dangerous, and so we need to talk about it. But it's just media hysteria, guys. It's just media. That's the real epidemic. It isn't the people dying or the overburdened healthcare system in Italy. When we look at Italy, the main thing people in Italy are concerned about right now, I wonder, it must be the media, right? I guess if I went over there and interviewed some Italians from their balconies, they would be, well, the real pandemic here, well, it could be that my neighbor just died, or it could be the evil CNN.
Public panic, crash the economy, and then blame Trump for it. To CNN's credit, they recognize a real opportunity to exploit public fear. It's an incredible...
Maybe conservatives don't really know much about economics as much as they like to know as much about economics as they suggest all the time when it comes to supply chains and demand cause recession or supply recessions or any of this. Maybe they just don't know any of it, and they've just been bluffing it for the last, I don't know, forever.
Irresponsible and dangerous thing to do to stoke fear this way, but they have chosen to do it, and it is working. It's impressive in the same way that it was impressive the way Hitler convinced an entire country that blonde people were superior.
He's really gonna compare the media reporting on developments of the coronavirus to Adolf Hitler's propaganda. He's really gonna take that leap. He's really gonna take that giant step. You know that thing that led to the Holocaust? That's just when Jake Tapper talked about the coronavirus. Just what's the difference here, guys? When Hitler created a culture that led to the Holocaust? No. Same thing as Jake Tapper reporting on what's going on. Really? Okay, man, that's not downplaying that whatsoever.
When he had brown hair. Credit for that joke goes to Joe Mackey. The guy is a genius. If you've never heard his comedy, look him up on YouTube, Joe Mackey.
It was a joke, guys. It was a joke, guys. It was a funny joke. It was a funny joke, guys. Get it? Haha, it was funny? It was funny? Did you get the joke where it was like, haha? This is just like Hitler? This is just like when the left was like Hitler? That was the funny joke, guys. Did you laugh? Can I ask anybody, did they laugh? Did anybody think it was a joke? I don't think he thinks it's a joke. I think he just wanted to compare it to Adolf.
Genius. One of the ways that the mainstream media is criticizing Trump is by saying we aren't testing enough. There aren't enough test kits, etc., and that this is all Trump's fault because, Trump actually puts those tests together himself by hand. I don't know if you know that. That's part of the job of the president, make coronavirus test kits.